Welsh singer-songwriter Duffy burst onto the music scene in the mid-2000s. She quickly rose to stardom, captivating a global audience and becoming one of the biggest names in pop music. But in 2011, Duffy suddenly, seemingly overnight, disappeared from the spotlight, leaving fans and the global music industry completely puzzled. It wasn't until years later, in 2020, that Duffy revealed the true, harrowing reason behind her sudden and prolonged absence. This is the horrifying, true story of what happened to Duffy, based entirely on her own words. The tragic true story. What happened to Duffy? The Welsh singing sensation Duffy, whose real name is Amy Ann Duffy, burst onto the music scene in 2008 with her debut album Rock Ferry. The album topped the charts in music markets around the world. The lead single, the infectiously catchy Mercy, hit #1 in Europe and beyond, and became one of the best-selling singles globally of that year. Duffy achieved critical acclaim, performing around the world, and winning the Grammy Award for Best Pop Vocal Album in 2009. Mercy was followed by another successful hit, The Beautiful Warwick Avenue, and then by the less commercially successful but critically acclaimed single, Stepping Stone. Her music was a mix of soul, blues and pop, and earned her comparisons with singers like Dusty Springfield and Amy Winehouse. Duffy was a huge international star, singing for audiences around the world, and appearing in adverts for Diet Coke and Nivea. She released a second album called Endlessly in 2010, which entered the top 10 in the UK and led to the lead single, Well Well Well. Signed to Universal Music, she seemed set to continue to conquer the music world. And then, in 2011, she vanished from the spotlight. Almost overnight, the media appearances stopped. There were no more concerts, no gigs, no more records. Her record label, agents, production, crew, stylists, all lost contact with her overnight. They never heard from her again. For years, people wondered what happened to Duffy. And in 2020, Duffy told the world the truth. Duffy said that she wanted to be open about what had happened to her, because in the words of Maya Angelou, there is no greater agony than bearing an untold story inside you. It took incredible strength for Duffy to share her story, and her courage in sharing such a horrific and harrowing story is nothing short of inspirational. The following contains graphic details based on Duffy's own words, and viewer discretion is advised. On the 23rd of June in 2011, Duffy had been out in a restaurant in London with her friends celebrating her birthday. While out at the restaurant, an unknown man managed to spike Duffy's drink. We do not know if this was someone who was working at the restaurant who spiked her drink while preparing or serving it, or whether it was someone else in the restaurant, watching from afar. What we do know, however, is that spiking is unfortunately common in restaurants and clubs around the UK. According to a recent YouGov poll, 10% of women said they had had their drinks spiked, while the most recent police stats show that nearly 7,000 reports of spiking are reported to them each year. Spiking almost always takes place in busy public places, such as bars and restaurants where Duffy was. The drugs took effect on Duffy, and she became incapacitated, unable to physically resist. It was at this point that she was kidnapped. Based on case studies from similar cases, it is most probable that the man took Duffy when she had returned to her London flat and had passed out, as this would have been when she was away from her friends and others were not around to protect her. According to Duffy's account, the man then took the drugged Duffy and put her into the back of a car, where he drove her to an airport and boarded her onto a plane. Duffy, who was incapacitated and unaware of her surroundings at this point, said that she was unable to comprehend what was happening to her and was unable to resist. Duffy stated that she had no memory of getting on the plane, and it's most likely that the man stole her passport while in her flat and boarded her onto a normal chartered flight. This may sound unbelievable, but in fact, thousands of women are trafficked through normal airports every year. It has become such a problem that staff in airports and cabin crew are now being trained on how to spot potential victims of trafficking. The International Air Transport Association have released guidance for airlines on how to spot people being trafficked. This includes things such as, is the person disorientated or confused, or showing signs of mental or physical abuse? Is the person fearful, timid or submissive? And is the person in control of their own travel documents? Duffy would almost certainly have raised a red flag to anyone looking. However, this training is not mandatory, and tragically, no one noticed that Duffy was in need of help. Duffy says that she next came to in the back of a car in a foreign country. She did not know which country she was in or how she had got there. The man then took Duffy to a hotel near the airport and took her up to his room. It was here where he began his campaign of abuse, and he raped Duffy. At this point, the drugs were wearing off, and Duffy says that she remembered the pain and trying to stay conscious. Over the next 24 hours, he stayed in the hotel room with Duffy. He told Duffy that she was to walk behind him, and he never made eye contact with her. Duffy, at this point, was broken, withdrawn, but she says she was still somewhat conscious. It's likely that the drugs the man had given to Duffy in London he could not travel with, and therefore she was not drugged while abroad. She says that she was worried that she could be disposed of by this man, that he would take her life in this hotel room in a foreign country. She said that while he slept at night, she contemplated running away to the nearest town or city. But as she did not know where she was and was terrified, had no money or possessions, and was unsure about what the man would do if she ran, she stayed in the hotel room. Incredibly, she found the strength to endure those days she was held captive with him. She says that she felt the presence of something that gave her the strength to stay alive. After a few days of being in the hotel room with him, he then flew her back to the UK. Duffy says that she was like a zombie as she boarded the flight. She stayed calm and followed his orders to board the plane. Again, anyone trained would have spotted that Duffy was a traffic victim. However, on this occasion, everyone again missed the signs. A few hours later, she landed in the UK with him still holding her hostage and was taken back to her apartment in London. She sat in her apartment, dazed and broken, unable to comprehend what had happened and what was happening to her. He was now holding her prisoner in her own flat. Duffy says that she felt like her life was in immediate danger. Her kidnapper kept making vague confessions of wanting to kill her, and therefore the only thing she felt she could do was to stay there and follow his orders, trying to be calm, trying to find the strength to carry on. Now he was back in the UK, her kidnapper started drugging her again. He then held her hostage, drugging her in her own flat for the next 4 weeks. She says that she remembers very little of that period. She does not know whether he raped her or what happened while he held her in her flat. After 4 weeks, although she has very little memory, Duffy thinks that she found the strength to escape and run away from her kidnapper. One day, she charged out of her apartment and into the street. With Duffy gone, her kidnapper left her flat quickly and escaped into the dark of the night. Duffy says that her next memory is of her sitting on her balcony, wrapped in a blanket. She cannot remember how or when she got back home. She was seen by someone she knew on her balcony. They said she was yellow in colour and looked like a dead person. They were worried and frightened, but did not want to interfere. In the coming weeks after the kidnapping, Duffy stayed in her flat, isolated. She did not go to the police about her horrifying ordeal or tell anyone. She said she was scared that her perpetrator would find her and kill her if she did this. As she was famous, she was worried about the story being on the news and the threat this would bring to her safety. Instead, she kept her story hidden, locked inside her. The coming weeks were incredibly hard for Duffy, and she says that she felt suicidal. She stayed alone in her flat. She became a recluse. She says she would take off her pajamas and throw them in the fire and put on another set. Her hair got so knotted from not brushing it that she cut it all off. Months later, Duffy found the courage to tell a psychologist about what had happened to her, a leading expert in complex trauma and sexual violence. It was her who gave her the strength to navigate her story and start to rebuild her life. It was from here that she started her road to recovery. She also built up the courage to tell the police about what had happened to her. The police have investigated the crime. However, her kidnapper and attacker has not yet been found, arrested, or charged with a crime. He remains at large. In an attempt to maintain her safety, Duffy moved house several times after the incident. She moved 5 times in 3 years. It was only in her 5th house, and after hours of work with her psychologist, that she says she now feels safe. The kidnapping, hostage and rape of Duffy is such a horrific story that it is almost beyond belief. And there are so many questions that arise from this, such as where were her family and friends during the 4 weeks she disappeared and was being held hostage? Duffy says that those who wanted to help were just too far away. Her family were in Wales while she was in London. Based on case studies from other kidnappings, it's also likely that her kidnapper took control of her phone and other forms of communications, potentially responding to friends and family pretending to be her, so as to put them off the scent that anything was wrong. When Duffy shared her story, she was overwhelmed with supportive messages and those contacting her who had been abused and raped, praising her for having the strength to speak out. She says, "I want you to know, I saw and read them. I read every word, and your story lives on in me." The kidnapping of Duffy serves as a stark reminder of the dangers that lurk beneath the surface of fame and the lasting impact of trauma on survivors. As we reflect on her courageous decision to share her story, we should admire not only her strength, but also recognise the importance of empathy, compassion, and support for those who have experienced similar traumas. So, what now for Duffy? Duffy has said that she hopes to go back to making music one day, but does not know when or how. She says that she shared her story to be free. She said, "I'm doing this to be freed, for all of me to be freed. What follows remains to be seen. I will now return to quietness. I can leave this decade behind, where the past belongs. Hopefully no more. What happened to Duffy questions. Now you know. And I am free."